Citizens speak out. People are calling for their governments in countries such as Bahrain, Israel, Guinea, Jordan, Libya, Malawi, Mexico, Palestine, Paraguay, Saudi Arabia, Syria, the United Kingdom, US, and Yemen to be accountable for their decisions and actions and to treat all fellow citizens with dignity and respect while ensuring basic rights and needs.
United Kingdom. On Thursday, July 20th, Prime Minister David Cameron faced Parliament during an emergency meeting called to discuss the news of the world phone hacking scandal. The Prime Minister stated that he deeply regretted hiring communications chief Andy Coulson, who had once been the newspaper's editor and has now been arrested on charges relating to the scandal. However, Prime Minister Cameron maintained that he did not breach any ministerial code in his dealings with the paper's parent company, News International, over its bid to take control of British Sky Broadcasting. Meanwhile, a report released by Parliament members prior to Wednesday's session found that News International had deliberately blocked a 2005-2006 police investigation into phone hacking.
A High Court judge also ruled in favor of British actor Hugh Grant on Wednesday, saying that police must hand over information either to him or his former girlfriend, Jemima Khan, that could show whether messages between them had been hacked by a private investigator working for News of the World at the time.
Mexico and United States. UK-based Reuters news agency reported on Tuesday, July 19th, that US immigration attorneys and rights groups in Texas, USA, have formed a coalition to assist a growing number of Mexican journalists and others seeking asylum from the country's drug-related violence.
Paraguay. About 20 inmates at the nation's main Tacumbo prison in Asunción are several weeks into a hunger strike, many of whom have sewn their lips closed with wire as they protest the harsh conditions and treatment, including claims that prisoners are not being released despite having completed their prison terms.
Malawi. Despite a high court injunction issued Tuesday that banned protests, demonstrations were held Wednesday in Mzuzu and other cities as people spoke out against rising fuel prices and the current government. At least one person was killed and more than 10 suffered gunshot wounds as the rising tensions sparked violence.
Guinea. President Alpha Condé, the first democratically elected head of state since 1958, was spared injury in an attempt made on his life Wednesday. Speaking on state television after the attack, he urged calm and pledged nothing would get in the way of the country's peaceful progress.
Israel. On Tuesday, hundreds of resident medical doctors in specialty training went on strike to demand better pay and working conditions, including more medical staff to accommodate overcrowded hospitals, as well as compliance with a decade-old agreement that limits the number of assigned overnight shifts.
Palestine. Arab League Secretary General Nabil al-Arabi spoke out against Israel's recent seizure of a Gaza-bound ship seeking to bring humanitarian supplies to the Palestinian people as he called upon the UN Security Council to take a decisive stance on the issue. Meanwhile, Israel began deporting the foreign nationals who had been on board the boat.
Palestine-based Ma'an news agency reported on Wednesday that protesters in Gaza blocked entrances to the UN Relief Works Agency, or UNRWA, for Palestinian refugees for 2 hours, saying that the agency is now minimizing its services as they demanded that it deliver those originally approved by the UN and international bodies in 1949. Meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also on Wednesday, Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero commended the recent reconciliation between Palestinian groups as he pledged renewed efforts with the European Union to relaunch Palestinian-Israeli peace talks.
Jordan. Jordanian officials admitted Wednesday, based on findings of an official probe, that security force personnel were responsible for an attack on journalists during a pro-democracy rally last Friday in Amman.
The officers are scheduled to face trial, with Jordan Press Association President Tarek Momani saying that his organization would be monitoring the outcome of the judicial proceedings.
Saudi Arabia. Reporting on an article in the Saudi daily newspaper Okaz, Agence France Presse stated that a 35-year-old unmarried Saudi woman is going to be tried in a Jeddah court for driving a car despite her claims that she drove herself to the hospital due to a medical emergency because she did not have a driver and public transportation was not available.
Bahrain. Various media report that Bahraini forces attacked with tear gas and rubber bullets in 4 cities on Wednesday as activists protested suppression by the current regime, calling for the ruling family to step down.
Yemen. On Wednesday, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's representative, Mr. Jamal bin Omar, met with Yemeni Foreign Minister Dr. Abu Bakr al-Kurbi in Sana'a, where he encouraged all parties to resolve the current crisis through peaceful dialogue, and also discussed the possibility of sending a UN team to the troubled Abiyan province.
Syria. On Wednesday, 2 weeks after US and French ambassadors had travelled from the capital, Damascus, to convey their support for peaceful pro-democracy protesters in Hama, Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim warned them not to do so again without permission. He said that disobeying this instruction will result in all diplomats being banned from leaving Damascus.
Libya. French Foreign Minister Alain Juppé stated Wednesday that the French government would consider an agreement that allowed Libyan leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi to remain in the country as a way to end the crisis. However, one condition would be that he resigns to allow democratic change in the country. Meanwhile, a relief flight was made for the first time from Misrata since the city was freed, carrying 10 wounded citizens to Benghazi.
With grief for fellow human lives lost, as well as those injured and oppressed, we pray for the conflicts in all nations to cease, and that citizens everywhere may choose to walk in peace, harmony and dignified freedom.